time for a brand new show. Scooby Doo is here again, away we go.
Scooby Doo is running from a spooky ghost.
Shaggy isn't doing what he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo.
Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby Doo. That's my pal. Scooby Dooby Doo.
Hello again, my meddling Scooby Doo fans, and welcome to another review into the world of Scooby Doo. So last time I continued my 2025 Halloween special with the review of Season 3, Episode 14 of the Scooby Doo Show. I hope you guys enjoyed that. We talked about how all the elements worked for me, how it was a pitch-perfect episode, how I could do no wrong, such as Shaggy and Scooby being on point, the villain being fun and entertaining, and the motive having a lot of good layers to it. But of course today, I'll be covering Season 3, Episode 15 of the Scooby Doo Show, titled The Warlock of Wimbledon, which was released on December 16th, 1978. The short synopsis of the episode is, while touring England, the gang come upon a tennis star named Jimmy Pelton, who's been cursed by Anthos, a warlock, and told to forfeit the Wimbledon tournament. So as per usual, I'll be watching Season 3, Episode 15 of the Scooby Doo Show on the Scooby Doo Are You, the complete series box set. This box set has every episode of Scooby Doo Are You, as well as every episode of the third season of the Scooby Doo Show. If you're wondering why the third season of the Scooby Doo Show is on a completely different series' box set, it's because Hanna-Barbera and Warner Bros. Like to falsely advertise the third season of the Scooby Doo Show as a fake third season of Scooby Doo Are You. But I've established on the channel in past videos that this is not the case, and that Scooby Doo Are You only had 2 seasons, while the Scooby Doo Show had 3 seasons. Now, as far as this episode's reception is concerned, I'm not really sure how fans feel about this particular episode. I haven't heard much discussion on this particular episode, so I'm not really sure what I'm walking into. So I guess really there's only one way to find out whether this is a good episode that, continues a streak of good episodes to 2, a terrible episode that goes back to the terrible ways of Season 3, or an average episode that goes back to the decent ways of Season 3. Well, let's find out, shall we? So let's take a look at the episode to see whether I think it is a good or bad episode of the Scooby Doo Show. The episode begins in England with Jimmy Pelton, a famous tennis star, and his manager, Nick Thomas, who are jogging one night, training for Jimmy's tennis match at Wimbledon the following morning, when they stumble upon the ancient druid ruins of Rothmore. There they discover some sort of ancient staff, and then they encounter a warlock named Anthos, along with his demon hound, who claims to have awoken from his lifelong sleep to fulfill the curse upon the Pelton family. The warlock tells Jimmy that as long as he has the cursed staff, he is doomed. Jimmy and Nick flee. Fred, Daphne, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby are touring England at the same time and happen to be driving near the ancient ruins of Rothmore. Nick and Jimmy stumble onto the road and are picked up in the Mystery Machine. Nick and Jimmy also tell the gang about their attack by the warlock Anthos, and the gang and Jimmy and Nick drive to Jimmy's mansion. Jimmy introduces the gang to the gatekeeper, John, and the housekeeper, Mrs. Warren. Miss Warren, who is very superstitious, warns Jimmy that she sees approaching danger. Suddenly, the warlock and the demon dog appear, threatening Jimmy again with the curse of Anthos, leaving behind the cursed staff when they disappear. Fred, the girls, Shaggy, Scooby, Nick, and Jimmy hurry to the gatekeeper's house, where they discover John is missing and the house ransacked and covered in red paw prints. They find John's boots, which are splattered with red mud. They follow the red paw prints until they eventually disappear, and just then, Mr. Burgess, Jimmy's solicitor, arrives and tells the tale of Anthos. He claims Anthos placed a curse on the house and on the Pelton family, and there is no escape. He also warns Jimmy that if he doesn't win the match tomorrow, Jimmy won't be able to pay his mortgage on the mansion and he will lose the house. Knowing the staff is cursed, Fred tells Shaggy and Scooby to get rid of it. Scooby and Shaggy attempt to get rid of the staff, but they are attacked and chased by Anthos. After many attempts to get rid of the staff, eventually the whole gang chases the warlock into the woods to the ruins of Rothmore, and then the warlock and the hound disappear and Nick also disappears. Jimmy loses his glasses, only to find them later, along with the staff, which he promptly snaps in half, hopefully ending the curse. Velma finds more red mud, and Jimmy tells the gang that the ruins are the only place in the country where you can find mud that is that special color. After hearing the demon hound's howls, the gang, along with Jimmy, rush back to the mansion and discover the perfectly fixed staff by the front gate, with a note attached that reads this.
If you play tomorrow, it It will mean your doom.
Mr. Burgess appears and warns Jimmy to heed the message, but Jimmy refuses to be scared off by the Warlock. The next morning, Fred, Daphne, and Jimmy head to Wimbledon for his match, while Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby stay behind to investigate the ruins. Shaggy, Scooby, and Velma tumble into a secret underground chamber, discovering a small workshop filled with sawdust and workbenches. Velma finds a receipt for a special lens there. Meanwhile, at Wimbledon, Jimmy's playing terribly, constantly seeing what he believes is the Warlock in the stands, even though no one else does. Back at the ruins, the Warlock suddenly appears and chases Shaggy, Scooby, and Velma all the way to Wimbledon.
What's this? One pair spec lens. This could be a clue.
Look what Scooby's found. Like, why would anyone want weird boots like these?
They wouldn't, unless...
How nice of you to drop in.
Jinkies, let's get out of here!
You cannot escape the wrath of Amphos.
Quick, guys, into the rowboat!
Like you don't have to tell us twice.
Oh, son.
Taking orders from a dog. If this ever gets out, my reputation's sunk.
Uh-oh, faster, guys! We got company! The Warlock is falling behind!
Like that's because there's water falling ahead.
Hold on!
Cowards and children first.
I don't know how we did it, but we've lost him.
Hey, look over there.
It's Wimbledon!
They find Fred and Daphne, and while Shaggy and Scooby are at the concessions, the Warlock reappears, chasing them into the locker room. And I gotta say, what the hell is the Warlock doing? Why is he so obsessed with chasing Shaggy and Scooby? Why is the Warlock Anthos going after these visitors, Shaggy and Scooby, as well as the rest of the gang, and concerning himself with them, when he should be more focused on trying to scare Jimmy Pelton? I know he has a guy in the stands, but still, why bother showing up and trying to chase Shaggy and Scooby when you should be trying to instill fear into Jimmy, because that's what you want. That's what you want to achieve your motive. You want Jimmy to be afraid of you. To me, it just feels like Hanna-Barbera, just trying to pad the runtime by adding some Shaggy and Scooby chase scene that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because why the hell would the Warlock Anthos chase after Shaggy and Scooby? There's no reason to do that. Like, his focus should be on Jimmy Pelton, not Shaggy or Scooby. It just feels so out of left field. Shaggy and Scooby are at the concession stands, they're just eating food, and then all of a sudden the Warlock and his Devil Hound appear and chase them? Why the hell did he do that? Why didn't he just go to Jimmy if he wanted to go scare him? Why is he even there at all? He's got a guy in the stands. To me, this just feels like a pointless filler scene that didn't need to be added. Velma then has an epiphany and puts her theory to the test by switching her glasses with Jimmy's. With Velma's glasses, Jimmy plays wonderfully and wins the match. However, the Warlock is still at large, and after a final chase, the Warlock is then captured. The Warlock is unmasked as Nick, and the Demon Hound turns out to be just a normal dog in a costume. Velma explains that when Jimmy lost his glasses in the woods, Nick secretly swapped them with a special pair. These glasses allowed Jimmy to see a particular kind of invisible makeup that others couldn't. This is why Jimmy thought he was seeing the Warlock in the stands, which was John the Gatekeeper wearing the invisible makeup, and he would stand up, and only Jimmy with his special glasses could perceive him as the Warlock. Velma also deduces that John was involved because of the red mud on his shoes, which Jimmy confirms could only be found at the ruins. The constant reappearance of the staff was explained by the fact that there was more than one. John and Nick were carving them in the secret workshop beneath the ruins. It's revealed that Nick and John are brothers and descendants of the Warlock Anthos. And the episode ends with them explaining that their motive was to ensure Jimmy lost a tennis match so he couldn't afford his mortgage, allowing them to inherit the mansion and fulfill their ancestors' revenge. I'm going to give Season 3, Episode 15 of the Scooby Doo Show 1 star out of 5. Yeah, this was an awful episode. It was terrible across the board. There was a few positives here and there, but they weren't that strong. And I gotta say, it's crazy how much the quality dipped from the last episode. We have the last episode, which was pitch perfect, 5 out of 5. Could do no wrong. I didn't have any issues with that. Then we go to this episode, and it's the complete opposite of the last episode. It's lucky that it even has positives, because it's so bad. It's quite terrible. I can see why I don't go back to it. It has so many issues and problems with it. It's one of the more boring episodes of the series, one of the weaker episodes of the series, and it's definitely a contender for one of the worst of the series, maybe the worst of Season 3, though we'll have to see how my rankings are down the line when we do an official ranking of the series as a whole. Or the individual seasons, we'll see. But yeah, suffice it to say, this episode is just terrible, and we just went from the best of the best to the worst of the worst. Like, we went from way up to way down, and it's crazy how much the quality of the episode dipped in just one episode. So, before I get into my negatives for the episode and what makes this episode so terrible and awful for me, I'll first get into the positives of the episode and talk about the stuff that, you know, did work for me in the episode and was at least somewhat good and redeemable. So starting with the positives, my first one is that I think Velma was good in this episode. She found most of the clues of the episode, basically like the red mud and the special pair of glasses, as well as the receipt for the special pair of glasses. So she found a majority of the clues of the episode, but she didn't really help piece together the clues to help solve the mystery. I don't think she fulfilled her basic role of the gears turning in her head and making everything click together. She did figure out that the glasses were rigged in some way, which is why Jimmy was losing the match and seeing the Warlock Anthos in the stands everywhere he looked. But, yeah, I would say that the only thing that redeems Velma for me in this episode was that she found a lot of the clues of the episode, so that was good. Then we have Shaggy and Scooby. Shaggy and Scooby were alright in this episode. They were decent. They found one of the clues of the episode, which was the boots with the red paw prints underneath. I think that was the only vital clue they found in the episode. But, yeah, Shaggy and Scooby did not fulfill their basic roles. They weren't really that humorous. In fact, they had no humor at all in this episode, except for maybe one moment where they pretended to be, like, you know, London tennis players, like England tennis players, you know, having a little UK accent. It was kind of funny. But other than that, Shaggy and Scooby didn't have a lot of humor in this episode, and they weren't really that cowardly in this episode. They didn't fulfill their basic roles, and they didn't even really help capture the villain at the end or do anything of note. So for me, the only thing that really saved them for me was that they found one of the clues of the episode, which was the boots with the red paw prints underneath. So at least they found that, but yeah, if it wasn't for that, Shaggy and Scooby would be terrible in this episode. I thought there were a good number of suspects in the episode. So you had 4 suspects in the episode. You have Nick Thomas, you have John the Gatekeeper, you have Mrs. Warren, and you have Mr. Burgess, who's Jimmy's solicitor. So all of them are equally suspicious, they in their own ways. John the Gatekeeper fakes his own kidnapping. Nick does as well. Miss Warren, you know, is very superstitious and kind of like warns them of danger. Mr. Burgess, Jimmy's solicitor, tells the backstory of the Warlock and tells him to heed the warning. So they were all equally suspicious in their own rights, and it was 1 villain and 4 suspects. So we had a good pool of suspects in this episode to kind of, you know, identify who could possibly be the villain of the episode. And my final positive is I found the clues of the episode to be good as well. So the main clues of the episode were the red mud, the boots with the red paw prints on the bottom, the receipt for the special pair of glasses, the special pair of glasses themselves, and the staff, the cursed staff of Anthos. So they all kind of help explain how he achieved his motive of, you know, scaring Jimmy. But I would say that the red mud definitely does kind of narrow down the suspect pool a little bit, and the special pair of glasses for Nick and John. because when John disappears, there's a bunch of red mud everywhere, even on his boots. And when you find the pair of boots with the red paw prints underneath, John seems to be kind of a main priority. But Nick is also a bit suspicious because when he disappears, Jimmy's glasses are right in front of the staff. So it does narrow down the suspect pool, and it does help explain how the villain achieved, his motive, like all the effects he was doing. But it didn't really point towards a motive. But that's okay, because it did narrow down the suspect pool a little bit, so it at least did that. But that's really all I have for positives. So I think it's about time we get on to the negatives of the episode, and what makes this episode such a terrible and awful episode for me personally. So starting with the negatives, my first one is I think Fred and Daphne were both weak in this episode. Fred really wasn't much of a leader in this episode. I did not get the sense that he was a leader at all. He didn't really help Velma piece together the clues to help solve the mystery. And he didn't really create a cool trap in this episode. The Warlock and the Demon Hound kind of just gave up. They didn't even really get captured. They just kind of gave up at the end because they fell in the stands with Scooby, one of the stands, and just didn't try to escape. Yeah, Fred didn't really do much in the episode, and Daphne just didn't fulfill any sort of role in this episode either. She didn't find any clues, wasn't really a leader, she didn't help piece together the clues to help solve the mystery, and she wasn't cowardly or comedic. So to me, both Fred and Daphne just didn't do a whole lot. Although to be fair, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby didn't really do a whole lot either, but they were saved because they found the clues of the episode, whereas Fred and Daphne didn't really do a whole lot in this episode for me to consider them good. Next up, we have the villain of the episode, who I thought was just terrible. So, the main villain of the episode is, of course, the Warlock Anthos and his Demon Hound, his Devil Hound. Now, the Devil Hound has a cool-ish design. He's kind of cool and could have been effective had they utilized him better, but the Warlock Anthos is really far from scary. There is nothing scary about the Warlock Anthos. Anthos is not scary in the slightest. He doesn't do anything scary. The closest he gets to kind of intimidating and creepy is when he pops out of the water when Shaggy and Scooby try to throw it in the river, and his hand comes out, and he throws it back at him, which is kind of cool. It kind of is a bit of a horror-esque moment, but I don't think they take full advantage of him being a warlock because he doesn't do a whole lot of magic, like scary magic in the episode to kind of make it seem threatening and menacing or scary. He just kind of throws them a staff and kind of just chases Shaggy and Scooby around, and that's it. Like, he's kind of pointless to me in this episode. He doesn't do a whole lot. And he's not entertaining either. He's not an entertaining presence. He feels like a supervillain in this episode with the way he poses like he's a villain. He's like got his hands on his hips, standing there like he's this fucking villain. And he's not scary or entertaining in the slightest. He doesn't feel like a Scooby-Doo villain at all. He just feels so out of place in this episode. And the closest he gets to kind of creepy and intimidating is that scene where Shaggy and Scooby throw the staff in the river, and he comes with his hand out of the water and throws it right back at them. But they don't really take full advantage of him being a warlock or take advantage of that moment and take it further. And the Devil Hound, while having a neat design, doesn't do a whole lot either to be creepy or intimidating. So you're just left with two villains that just don't really do a whole lot other than dick around and just point at Jimmy saying, "You must lose." And they don't really do anything. They're just kind of boring. So yeah, the villain's awful. He's one of the worst villains of the Scooby Doo show. He's a terrible villain. And I didn't find either of them scary or entertaining. They were definitely one of the worst villains of the Scooby Doo show. And one of the worst of the franchise. So yeah, didn't like the villain. Terrible villain. And he had the potential to possibly be better. There's potential there with a Devil Hound and a Warlock. But they do not take full advantage of that, of those concepts at all. You have two great concepts for a villain, a Warlock and a Devil Hound, and you waste it and make them very boring and kind of bland and comedic and super villainish and not really feeling like a down-to-earth, Scooby-Doo villain that could be scary or a fun and entertaining Scooby villain. They just kind of feel like they're in a they should be in a different show. Like, yeah, Anthos, to me, terrible villain. Same thing with the Devil Hound. Potential there, but it's completely squandered, and one of the worst villains of the Scooby Doo show, in my opinion. Outside of costume, I found Nick and John Thomas to be both uninteresting. So we find out that Nick Thomas and John, the gatekeeper, are related and are brothers and the ancestors of Anthos, which is kind of cool, but it's a very last-minute detail, and it kind of feels out of left field. And they're not interesting at all out in the episode. Nick Thomas is just the manager for Jimmy, and he doesn't do a whole lot, to be quite honest. He just kind of portrays himself as kind of a victim, like he's kind of like Jimmy, like he doesn't know what's going on. And John, the gatekeeper, barely has any screen time. He barely does anything. He just opens the gate, and then literally like a couple scenes later, he fakes his kidnapping. Like, it was so quick. We barely even knew the guy, and he barely made any sort of presence. So neither Nick or John were really interesting outside of costume. They were very uninteresting, and it felt so unnecessary to add this detail of like, oh, they're really brothers, and they're the ancestor, you know, they're the descendants of Anthos, which is weird to me. Like, it's weird that they add that detail. It just feels so out of left field, like they needed higher stakes or to enhance the episode or something. I don't know. It felt like an unnecessary detail and felt completely out of left field. It didn't add anything. They were both uninteresting. So yeah, I didn't really like Nick or John, despite them having, you know, being descendants of Anthos and actually being related and being brothers. They were very uninteresting. They didn't do anything to stand out in the episode. I found the motive of the episode to be very repetitive and very bland. So the main motive for Nick Thomas, as well as John the Gatekeeper, was that essentially they wanted to scare Jimmy Pelton into losing his championship match so they could essentially buy his mansion. So Jimmy would they would scare Jimmy into losing the match. Jimmy wouldn't have to be able to pay for the mortgage, and then they would swoop in and buy the mansion and fulfill their, ancestors' revenge. This is a very boring motive because it essentially just feels like a repeat of the Arlene Wilcox episode motive. It's literally the exact same motive. Like, they haven't done anything to change it whatsoever. It feels the exact same as that of Arlene Wilcox's twin sisters motive. It feels like the same kind of motive, and it wasn't good in that episode for me, so it's not good in this episode in the slightest. It's just a very terrible motive. It's very repetitive. It's just, we've seen this motive before, and it's not a very unique and interesting motive, and there's no layers to it. Like, you could say that it's kind of cool that a villain wants to scare someone into, losing their estate and fulfilling their, ancestors' revenge. But honestly, I just don't feel like it's that well executed. Like, maybe in another scenario, it could have been well executed, but it just isn't interesting. Like, the episode just is really bland with it, and it's just like we've seen this before. Like, this is what Arlene Wilcox's twin sister essentially did to her. This is what she did, and it's the same season. They're literally reusing the exact same motive they just used in a previous episode in this season, earlier on in season 3, and it wasn't good then, so why would it be any better now? If you're not going to try and change it up and make it interesting, then why bother using that exact same motive? To me, it just felt like a terrible motive. It was very repetitive. It was very bland. There was no fun or unique layers to it. It just was like, it's just a boring, generic land motive, and that's all it is. And it's repetitive, and we've seen it before, and it wasn't done well then, and it wasn't done well now. They did nothing to make it interesting this time around. So yeah, didn't like the motive. Very weak, very repetitive, very bland. I found there to be no mystery in this episode. I didn't really see any sort of mystery at all throughout the episode. The gang just kind of were being good Samaritans and essentially being like, okay, this famous tennis star, Jimmy Pelton's being kind of harassed by this warlock. Let's just be good Samaritans to help him out. There's no sort of mystery here. Like, we're not questioning why the warlock is after Jimmy and why he wants him to lose his estate. Because we get the backstory, he makes it clear up front, so we know why he's after Jimmy and his, family estate. So we're not really questioning why he's haunting the area, why he's after Jimmy, and there's no other questions I'm asking throughout the episode. So yeah, overall, there just isn't any mystery at all in this episode. It just kind of feels like the gang are doing it because they really have nothing better to do, just to be good Samaritans, I guess. But that's really all. I found the atmosphere of the episode to be weak as well, so I didn't really feel any sort of tension or suspense or creepiness or eeriness throughout the episode. Despite the episode being surrounded by fog and them trying to create a creepy atmosphere, I didn't really get the sense of that. And to be quite honest, it kind of gets a little more bright and vibrant towards the end because it's during the daytime, during the Wimbledon tournament. So the Warlock isn't very threatening or scary once it transitions into daytime. I wasn't fearing for the gang's safety because the Warlock wasn't doing anything, you know, particularly threatening towards the gang. He wasn't really threatening or, you know, endangering them in any way. And I wasn't on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen next. And I didn't find anything about the villain or setting to be creepy or eerie, despite them trying to create like a foggy, dark night. And that was what the episode, for the majority of it, was. But it didn't really work, and once they transitioned daytime and we were in bright, you know, sunny day England and in the Wimbledon tournament, and, you know, we were watching this tennis tournament, it kind of lost any sense of atmosphere. Like, it was more bright and vibrant for me, and yeah, I didn't feel any atmosphere at all in this episode. They tried, for the majority of it, to, you know, add some fog and mystique and grandiose to the villain, but he didn't do enough to add, do anything, to be quite honest, to enhance the atmosphere. Because he wasn't scary, he didn't threaten the gang's safety, and nothing in the setting provided any sort of creepiness or eeriness, or, you know, threaten the gang's safety in any way. So yeah, for me, there just really wasn't any atmosphere at all. It was very weak. There was potential, to be sure. They tried, but I just don't feel like they really executed it that well. And my final negative is I found the setting of the episode to be weak as well. So the main setting of the episode is, of course, England. Specifically, the Druid Ruins of Rothmore, Jimmy's Manor, and the Wimbledon tennis court. Now, England is a really neat idea for a setting. In fact, it should be a good idea for a setting because the Scooby Gang haven't been there before. This is a great opportunity to explore a place we haven't been here before. And I do like the idea of a Scooby Gang mystery taking place in England. Unfortunately, they don't take full advantage of it, and the areas they explore are very boring. The Druid Ruins of Rothmore are very boring and uninteresting. It's just a bunch of land, you know, there's not really much to it. There's a bunch of stones and land, but it's not that interesting. Jimmy's Manor is just a manor. Like, there's nothing special about it. It's not special from any other manor that we've seen in Scooby Doo. And the Wimbledon tennis court, to me, just is too bright and vibrant. It's not that interesting. It could be an interesting setting for a Scooby Doo episode, but I think it's more interesting if it's, like, you know, dark out. It has a bit more, you know, fog, maybe, like in the beginning of the episode. Maybe it could have been interesting, but when it's bright and sunny and in the daytime, it's a little too bright and vibrant for me. It's just not a very interesting setting, in my opinion. So despite this episode taking place in England and having great potential to have a, you know, a setting that hadn't been explored before, a very unique and interesting setting, unfortunately, they didn't take full advantage of it, and instead they just wasted it on these very boring and generic settings, and it just didn't work for me. So yeah, unfortunately, despite the unique idea of having England as a setting, a main setting for a Scooby-Doo episode, unfortunately, they just didn't, you know, hit the mark, and it was a very weak execution of the England setting. Overall, guys, I would personally not recommend this episode to fans and newcomers to the show. It's just a terrible episode. It really is bad. Like, it wastes its setting. Like, it has a great setting, but it wastes it. And it's just a very boring episode because not much of it, many things happen. Like, it's a very boring episode. There's not much that's going on. The Warlock is wasting his time chasing Shaggy and Scooby rather than scaring Jimmy. And he just overall is a very weak and boring villain that doesn't feel like a Scooby-Doo villain at all. And it just overall is easily one of the worst episodes of the series as a whole. And it definitely is one of the worst of Season 3, if not the worst. It's just not a good episode. It feels very boring. It feels like it wastes its setting. It wastes its time. And it just isn't a very fun episode to watch. And I can see why I don't go back to it. It really falls flat. And it's a shame because we had a really good episode in the last one, but this one just doesn't do it for me. So yeah, don't check this one out. It's not worth your time. It's a very boring and uninteresting episode. There's much better episodes in Season 3 that you can go check out, such as the previous one. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give it a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the episode. Do you like this episode? Do you disagree with me? Do you think this is a really good episode that maybe I'm being too harsh on? Are there more positives to it that you see that I don't see? Do you hate this episode? I'd be interested in that as well. Do you agree with me? Do you think this is a terrible episode that drops the ball on, almost everything and isn't really a good episode and isn't worth checking out and isn't worth watching because it wastes its setting and is very boring due to not, using its runtime very properly and not crafting a compelling mystery? Or are you somewhere in the middle where you think it's average, it's decent, it's okay, but it's not good or bad? I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Scooby Doo content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content, obviously I have more Scooby Doo reviews on the way. We cover all things ranging from Scooby Doo TV shows, to films, to video games, to books. So if you're a diehard Scooby Doo fan like me, who loves all things Scooby Doo, loves talking all things Scooby Doo, and wants to join in on the discussion, then please come and join the channel. If you're a casual who is new to the franchise, or hasn't seen it in a while, and wants, a diehard's opinion like me or some other diehards on the channel, then come check out these, videos. Come check out my Scooby Doo content for, my personal recommendations, as well as maybe the audience's personal recommendations on what episodes of each individual series you should watch, as well as movies and video games and books. So yeah, come join the channel, experience some amazing Scooby Doo content. Let's talk about our favorite mystery-solving gang. In my next video, I'll continue my 2025 Halloween special with a review of Season 3, Episode 16 of the Scooby Doo Show, titled The Beast is Awake in Bottomless Lake. This is the final episode of Season 3, as well as the series as a whole. I cannot believe this, but we are about to end the Scooby Doo Show in just one video left. One more video, and we are done with the Scooby Doo Show. It's crazy, that we're finally reaching the conclusion of the Scooby Doo Show, and I'm quite sad because I've loved talking about the Scooby Doo Show. But yeah, this is the last episode, and I don't have high expectations going into it because I haven't seen this episode in quite a while. I don't remember it that well. I think it takes place in Canada, but I haven't seen it in a while. So I don't have high expectations that Season 3 will end on a high note, and considering this episode was terrible, I'm not really sure what to expect with this episode, whether it'll be a hidden gem or a forgotten episode for a reason. But yeah, if you want to know my thoughts on Season 3, Episode 16, the final episode of the Scooby Doo Show as a whole, as well as Season 3 of the Scooby Doo Show, then come join me next time. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, peace out.
What he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved.
Hang around for Scooby